Welcome! You are listening to the CRM Success Show, where you will hear from CRM executives who have overseen some of the most interesting and complex CRM implementations. Your hosts, David Masri and Kiro Whitey, will be bringing you real stories, real insight. Follow along on social media for updates on new episode releases, exclusive content, and much more. Enjoy the show and thanks for listening.
Let's go. Okay. Welcome to the CRM Success Show, where we deep dive in CRM success and failure, delivering real stories with real impact. I'm Dave Masri.
And I'm Kiro Whitey.
And today we're talking with Ethan Waller, who's the head of Salesforce Solutions at Goosehead Insurance.
Hello.
Fantastic. All right. So, Ethan, thank you for joining us today. Happy Friday. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me. Appreciate this.
Absolutely. Could you start with giving our listeners a high-level overview of your role, Goosehead Insurance, and how they are currently using Salesforce as things stand?
Absolutely. So thank you for the introduction. I'm the head of Salesforce Solutions. Goosehead Insurance is one of the largest personal line insurance brokerage in the United States. So we don't directly, we're not an insurance company. We sell for other carriers, right? So the big ones that I'm sure everyone's heard of. On the different various TV commercials and what have you. So what's interesting about us is that we are one of the largest. However, we have zero paid media. We don't do any advertising, and our revenue is growing 30% year over year. And our last quarter, we killed it again, even with this hard insurance market. And you're like, well, how do you do that? Well, I'll go into how I'll use Salesforce, but our main driver is our referral partner search tool that we created internally. So we have a large data set of loan officers, realtors, construction firms, title agency, mortgage companies, and we develop relationships one-on-one with them. And essentially, when someone's buying or selling a home, they need new insurance. And what's also really great about Goosehead is that we integrate and work with about 200 various insurance carriers across the United States. So we have a competitive edge that we're able to truly shop for a wide range of insurance policies to get you the best one and the best rate. And also we have the opportunity to look at different rates. Like maybe it's a little more expensive, but you get better coverage, $100 more, but you get $100,000 more in coverage, right? Those sort of things that we have because we're able to look at so many carriers in one foul swoop. That's kind of how we differentiate ourselves from our competitors. And we've built internal tools, our own internal rating system and external rating system, which everybody that's listening could please go to goosehead.com and check it out. It's totally free, just to compare your insurance rates. It's totally fast. It'll take you about 5-10 minutes. So it's very cool. And I think second part of your question was, so how do we use Salesforce? I would say, how do we not use Salesforce? Our entire company, we have about 4,600 users that live and breathe in some part of Salesforce. Every single department, every single person uses Salesforce every day for their job. So I manage a team of analysts, data analysts, admins, project managers, like provisioning admins. I also help oversee our MuleSoft team, development team. So that's around 40-ish some odd people. And then in our particular Salesforce org, we have all the clouds. So if there's a cloud, we most likely have it. Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, we have CRMA, We also have Tableau, which we have Snowflake as our backend data lake. We use dbt, Fivetran. We have Data Cloud, Heroku, which that's our raters on Node.js and React. MuleSoft, we have Maps, Omnichannel, FSC, Experience Cloud, Service Cloud Voice, and then on top of that, we have all of our other little systems that we have, right? Like we have deduping tools, we have our own backup, own archive, own seeding. We use Sonar for data dictionary, API monitoring. We use Capado for our CI/CD, which is our change management tool, as well as Capado robot testing. Yeah, and we have many other tools, but that's just a sliver of the things that we do. So once again, there isn't a department that does not use Salesforce in one way or the other.
It's pretty unique to see that. You know, I think usually most commonly it's sales use it or customer service use it, right? But you know, for every single department to be touching Salesforce in some way is pretty unique. Just for context for our listeners, on Goosehead Insurance, could you just specify what types of insurance you guys sell?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we do primarily we do home and auto, but we do stuff like umbrella, jewelry, a little bit of residential, a little bit of life, but we're primarily focused in home and auto, and then bundling those various things. And another thing that we've done is because we have such good relationships with all these carriers, we're actually able to bundle 2 different carriers and get different discounts. Because maybe one carrier doesn't do auto, but they do home, and then another carrier is like, hey, well, we do the other half of it. If you go with them, and we'll get it together, and we'll give you a discount on top of that. So it's yeah, we just have all sorts of really interesting and cool things that we've been able to do with our carrier relationships as well as the technology.
That's awesome. And for those that are interested in learning more about Goosehead, they are a publicly traded business, correct? So plenty of information out there on trading history and growth and things like that. So definitely recommend some further exploration there if you're intrigued. And before we move on, you know, a little bit further, you've been with the business for about 18 months, is that right?
That's correct.
Perfect. And how long have you been in the Salesforce ecosystem for so far?
Oh man, so I think I started around maybe 2008. I think that's when I first, and you know, the joke is I was working in Classic it was called Classic. You know, that's a Salesforce joke. I don't know if it's funny, but it is a joke. But yeah, that far back.
OG, maybe showing your age a little bit, so we'll move on.
Yeah, that's my gray hair. That's what's showing my age.
So a couple of questions on your user base. You said everyone in the company's in it, but like from sales, like you have your brokers in there, they're doing sales, and you do your underwriting in there as well?
So yes, because we don't actually, we're not an insurance carrier. We don't have brokers, right? So we don't, I mean, excuse me, we don't have any underwriters. We do have an internal, basically, we have an internal QA team that looks at every single policy we bind that comes through one of our carriers to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. We have all the documents that, you know, the address is here, the address is there, you know, all that fun stuff. Because what's also really interesting is that county by county, there are different rules with insurance, right? And also just understanding all of those things and understanding, are you in a flood zone? Are you at risk to being fired, having fire, like in California? So, you know, those things are all things that like our agents have to understand. So we do have multiple phases of that sort of policy life cycle before it's bound with the carrier. So it's similar to, I mean, it's not really an underwriting, but as much as we have to really analyze each of the policies before we bind with the carrier. Yeah.
So you have all those rules in Salesforce, like you actually configure it. So take us through that process. I guess you would call it the application process.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, how it works is when you go to goosehead.com, you'll actually see our online rating tool, which is free for anybody to use to get your quotes. And then we have all sorts of technology that we're working on in the background, which is all running on the Heroku platform and our full stack, right? So the first round, as you're entering in your information, the first round actually loops through our MuleSoft uh, architecture, and that architecture, based on business rules of like where do you live, all those rules that I kind of mentioned before, right? The qualifications of the different insurance, and then based on that, it says, do you qualify here? Yes, no, here, So there's all these checks, and then it blasts out to all the carriers. Hey, let's get some quotes, and then we get all those quotes back. Then all this information starts flowing into Salesforce as this beginning opportunity, as you're walking through, binding this policy. And then somewhere down the path, let's say that you update your quote that you want to add another driver. Let's say you're doing auto, you want to add another driver, or you want to delete a driver or something like that. We run it through MuleSoft again to then update with that existing kind of quote ID back to the carriers, and we get the results back. But then the third is when we're ready to bind, which is meaning that we have built and worked with our carriers and large partners of ours that we built end-to-end API integration. Most insurance brokers that you are going to see out on the internet, it's basically a lead gen that they do. Those, they call it rate call one. That rate call one to get the initial quotes is pretty standard across all insurance carriers, pretty much. So if you work with them, you can get those rates. So, but we've worked with them to now do that last step where we no longer have to actually sign into the carrier to complete or bind it. We are able to bind that insurance policy with our own application, which is once again built all in Heroku. We're using Node and React. So that's also a kind of a thing that kind of puts us above the rest, is that we've invested a lot of time and resources in getting that end-to-end process where you are able to bind that insurance very quickly. So yeah, and that's sort of like the beginning of the pipeline, right? Now it's in the Salesforce journey. So now there's all these things that are happening out inside Salesforce. For the minute that contact account, that home, that car, all this information starts flowing into Salesforce, and then we have millions of processes that are kicking off, checking all sorts of stuff, right? Pulling different data sources, maybe finding when's the last time your roof was redone, or when's the last time you had an accident, or things like this, right? So all of this stuff where we start collecting all this data. And then and also during this time, our marketing cloud starts kicking off different journeys, right? Now you put in journeys. Let's say that you don't bind and you're like, not for me right now. I'm happy with what I have. Well, now we're going to put you in a marketing cloud journey to see like, hey, we'll let you know that XYZ is happening in your area. It might be good to check us out again or something like that. Or as an existing client, hey, we noticed that there was a big storm in your area the other day. You might want to check to see if your roof's okay. Maybe you got hail damage or something like that, right? So we're doing proactive stuff like that as well. And then after that, now and also this is really great. This is also an interesting feature about Goosehead. So Goosehead is comprised. We have corporate agents, which means that you have agents that work for the national office, and then you have franchise agents. So once again, that's all organic. People come to Goosehead and say, hey, I'd like to own a franchise. I think we're in the top 10 of the #1 franchises in the United States. And what's really great about our franchise model is that once an agent binds that policy, it kicks over to our service team. So we have 1,000 some odd service agents around the United States that when you call a number, you're going to talk to one of our service agents, and they actually help service your policy. So if you get in an accident, or you need a question about your claim, or you need an ID card, or you just want general information, you have a central one number that you have to call, and you're going to get a hold of one of those 1,000 people to assist you. So this lets our agents, our sales agents, focus on sales, and our support agents support on service. So being part of the franchise, you get that service agent as part of your package. So that's also like a really great benefit for somebody that's interested in looking to become a Goosehead franchise. And I know we're actively still looking for people that are interested in becoming franchise owners. So go to goosehead.com and check it out.
Great, there we go. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask about the franchise model, right? Because I think it's something that adds another unique component to the business, and the ability to act as a business within a business. And it's really interesting to see, almost 1 in 4 employees is service focused, right? As someone who is and was a customer of Goosehead, a lot of this is interesting to me to see. Okay, yeah, I did get the marketing campaign, and then I did come back after the renewal. So definitely piecing that together. So good insight there as well. So we know, Goosehead are continuously, investing in Salesforce and its family of products and embedding them into the org, using pretty much every product there is. That's been a journey over time, right? How long when did Goosehead first start to use Salesforce? I know it's prior to your time, but roughly how long has this been to get to this point?
I think it's about 13, 14 years. We're actually on the same org that they spun up that originally. So I think, and everybody knows what it's like having an old org, coming in and seeing where all the skeletons are buried, or not even buried. They're just right in front of you, of like what's happening, right? So as the Goosehead Insurance has grown so much in the past few years, like we're just expanding, we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and our org is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that was one thing that when I first started, we were really hyper focused on optimization and consolidation of different products, processes, things like that. And that's not done. We're not anywhere close to being done, but we're always having to look at legacy processes, legacy, even tech within inside of Salesforce. And as things are starting to deprecate, as things are going end of life, now we're having to say, okay, well, we're gonna have to pause on this cool new feature that we want to do, because we have to get this up to date. Otherwise, it's not going to stop working. But like, Salesforce isn't going to support it. And if it's part of your core production, you can't live like that, right? You just can't work like that. So I don't know if that where you were going. I was just
I think
yammering on.
It's a useful point. I think it'd be good to hear about this continuous improvement, and that's a project within itself, right? How do you continually look to streamline processes and convert those old process builder and workflows into flow and so on, right? That is something that's well documented, right? Could you give us a bit of insight to perhaps a priority project that you're currently working on within Salesforce?
It's funny that you even mentioned that, because right now we are working on converting process builders to flows.
Not scripted.
No, it really wasn't. It's not. But we literally the kickoff call was today.
No way.
I totally, honest to God. But so what's interesting is that, once you're inside the Salesforce ecosystem, you start learning about the infamous governor limits, right? And understanding the not the confines, but the bumper guards that Salesforce puts on you so that you don't run rampant, right? They force you to optimize. You don't have a choice. You have to live within their boundaries. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? So when workflow moved to process builder, everyone was like, oh, process builder, we really hate the UI, but it's better than workflow, right? And so Goosehead did exactly what were supposed to do at that time, right? They converted workflows into process builders. So now that there's like 100 process builders that are, I don't know how many nodes deep, with all of this, with this craziness that's happening with inside of there. And the logic is kind of like, yeah, it's iffy just because that's the way it was designed. And so now guess what? Well, we're a really huge, very busy org. And if you can believe, process builders are very inefficient in running any sort of automation, declarative automation in Salesforce. So we're actually hitting a lot of errors because of legacy Salesforce tech, which seems crazy, but that's what's happening, right? So we're seeing long running processes that die because after that 10 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever those different time periods, Salesforce kills it, right? And you get an error and you're like, oh man. And so uh, it's a long time coming, but we kicked it off today, and hopefully we'll get it done by this quarter. But once again, we also worked with a Salesforce engineer, and they basically just said, look, you have to get these upgraded, otherwise your org is just gonna like go to a crawl. So here we are. We're doing it.
Wow. So yeah, tell us a bit more about that. Like, how do you know? Right. So anybody who's taken the admin exam, right? One of the things they tell you to study is the order that things fire off, right? So
Yeah.
first you're gonna have your pre-update, then your post-update, and your flows, and your triggers, right? Um, the process builders, right? So, and if you got like a really, really big org, and now you're, like so big that you really got to like, rewrite all of these process builders as flows. How do you manage that knowledge of just what has to happen when? Um, Not to mention because using FSC, right? So FSC had all of it also automation built in there. Um, right. So you got to know what that does. Then you got to know what your stuff is doing, and you got to know all the orders. And then you're rewriting the code. Like how do you manage just like forget even the rebuilding, just the knowledge of like what has to be done? Are you using like some kind of automated testing tool? Are you documenting this? Do you have like a giant Gantt chart? Not a Gantt chart, a flow chart, decision
Yeah,
tree.
I mean that is the $1 million question, right? Because even I think as Salesforce admins, we every time an admin leaves an org, a little bit of
Mhm.
that historical knowledge or that Oracle like goes out the window, right? And it's always a struggle. I mean, the beauty of the declared nature of Salesforce is that it's so easy to do something, but then it's like, why did we do it, or why is this here? Another thing that we've struggled with is that we found redundancies inside of the various process builders and flows because people didn't know that this action was already happening over here and now it's happening over here, right? So we're doing like double DMLs or something, right? Like it's insane. Well, I tell you how we're handling it, how we're going to handle it. Basically, I've assigned one of our senior Salesforce admins to work with. So we've assigned a group of people to systematically start breaking down each of the process builders and moving them to flow. That's the first thing we're doing, and we're having them blindly move them, not activating them, but just blindly rebuilding the logic in workflow. And then we're gonna have a senior architect admin then look at our current flow as it relates to that object. And what we've done now is we're starting to create master flows inside those master flows, we're determining, is this a subflow of this flow, or is this actually a flow? And then also we're looking at redundancies, as well as, is this process still even needed? Because this process builder was made 5-6 years ago. Is this even valid anymore, right? So that's how we are tackling it right now. Because everyone says document, document, document. That's great. But if this document was created 5-6 years ago, I'm not sure how valid it would be in our current org right now. And I think also the other good thing is that Salesforce is pretty readable in the declarative UI. So understanding, but how it works is easy. The why is a little harder, but that's what we have our admins
That's
for.
true. The how it works is easy, because that's really the core of my questions, right? So if you have 100 process builders, I don't know how many use cases or use case flows that covers, right? How many paths can it, traverse through that, and how do you regression test all of that, right? And
Yeah.
I
So
would not be surprised if you're rebuilding if you find a legacy bug.
I mean
Probably
that
more than one.
oh, I absolutely guarantee you will find a legacy bug.
Right.
I guarantee you. So what we just did recently is that we, like a few months ago, we purchased Capado robotic testing. So we're actually creating test cases for the robot to do regression testing on each iteration of all this stuff going forward. This project, as well as just our regular releases. So this is a great opportunity for us to also create those test cases as we go through this process. So that's new for us, but I think that's going to help. Yeah, and I know you said how will I know? Or what was your,
Well, how will you
question again?
know? How do you how do you even know the use cases, right, of all of these flows, right?
Correct. Yeah.
If you're
No, I
saying
mean,
every county had its own rule, and based on the insurance type, and I'm sure based on the individual, their age, their general demographic data, then I'm sure where the entry point is it from your website, is it from the user directly into Salesforce, all right, is it from a franchise or an internal, all of that kind of stuff, not to mention the values they enter, right? Is it,
yeah,
old beat up car or newer car? All of that I would assume affects the flow, right? But not to mention
yeah.
dollar amounts. So there must be just so many rules, like business rules of what has to happen.
There is. I would say for that very specific scenario that you were talking about, all of that is really handled on our full stack side. Once it gets into our Salesforce org, we're really about maintaining and servicing once the policy comes back into the org. So we don't make a lot of decisions about the actual insurance, like binding. That's in our Heroku environment. That's where all that logic sits. And that I feel for my counterpart that he manages all of that, because it's massive. That code base is huge, and we have 8 Scrum teams with 50 some odd web developers working on this project that we have going on, getting on new carriers and more carriers and more carriers. And it's very impressive to see it all happen. But so once it gets into Salesforce, our processes are really about, like I said, servicing and maintaining the policy through the life cycle of that particular policy, like the term of the policy, like cancellations, renewals, all the service stuff. And then just all the different regulation pieces that we have to also look at. All of that is all in different logic with inside flows. Now, a lot of these things are like stamping, like analytic data as well, right? So when was the first time they called? When was the first time the policy was created? How many times is the policy renewed? when did the policy cancel and did they not renew? Yes. So these are just all the things that I think are sitting in these little process builders. I haven't looked through all of them because there's quite a few, but yeah. So I don't know quite what we're going to uncover just because I haven't looked at all of it, but it should be exciting.
It will be rewarding when it's finished, I think, and it'd be interesting to kind of hear your thoughts maybe in 3 months, 6 months time, right?
Yeah.
See how many of those extra grays you pointed out might be there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, what's interesting is like this one little piece causes such a trickle down effect of performance in our org. Like it really is staggering that these process builders are literally choking our org, which is crazy to think that this was it a couple years ago. But you know, as technology gets better and Salesforce gets better, that's what we're doing.
There's an aspect of embracing change, right? But there's also, I would imagine, an aspect of frustration that you know, there's innovation, but maybe perhaps innovating too quickly. That, you know, in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, are you going to have to do all this again, and it's going to be called something else, right? The critics out there might say this is just a classic way, you know, Salesforce is creating more work, further embedding themselves into a business that makes it so impossible to move away from in the future, right? It's creating, you know, additional work. But I think one thing that you really mentioned was it's allowed an opportunity to redefine the processes in the first place. It's caused the business to sit back and evaluate, is this process fit for purpose for what we want to achieve now? You know, I think it's like a bit of spring cleaning, right? Unless the closet is full, you're probably never going to clean it. You're always busy. You're always, you know, just going to keep chucking things in there. But eventually, when the door's bulging and you can't close it, then you're forced to do something about it, right? So, see both sides of that argument. But I wanted to ask you about Copado quickly. So you mentioned Copado robotic testing. You know, just for our listeners who maybe aren't as aware with Copado and its use case, and you know, maybe other businesses that are looking at a similar project exercise, going from, you know, this legacy process builder stuff to flows. Why did you choose Copado, and were there any other tools that you evaluated at that time that you kind of maybe came second place, and you know, what kind of made them stand out?
Yeah, so you know, I think our so there hasn't been a lot of products really dedicated for the Salesforce ecosystem, and as fast as Salesforce is changing, even with the introduction a couple years ago of like MFA, right? Like even that was a interesting thing for QA testers, right? Because now you have to figure out, okay, how do I send this token, or how do I do this? How do I do that? Because most tool previously just username, password, login, and go, right? So Copado, okay, I'll take a step back. So we have Copado CI/CD, which is our change management software. And what's great about it is that all our analysts kind of have their own kind of, our Salesforce admins analysts have their dev orgs, which we use Copado to promote to our UAT for testing. All that UAT is like a full sandbox where we do the rest of our testing. And then when I came on, they were doing changes just kind of willy-nilly, like we need to change, push it through, change, push it through. And it was kind of causing a little like disruption in our workflow, because if something went haywire, it's like, well, what happened? So first thing I instituted was we changed releases to every Wednesday. And why I chose Wednesday is because it's not the beginning of the week, it's not the end of the week. And I have a few days if something breaks before I have to work on it for the weekend. So essentially, then what we do is then we promote it all up, and then we promote it to production on a Wednesday. And then we have then the ability, Copado has this really great tool that lets you back promote the changes from production to lower environments. So now all your dev boxes where people are developing now have an updated profiles. They have the updated object that your coworker was working and developing. So that's a really cool feature. as well as just being able to keep track of all the changes in a more visual way. We know like change sets after amount of time, they kind of drop off out of the platform, and it's hard to look back historically. And especially because we sell insurance, we're kind of under the watchful eye of different regulatory things. So we need to be able to prove why a field was moved from this org to this org, and who requested it, why. So we have lots of gates that we go through to get something from a lower environment to a higher environment. So that's working. And then the second part was now the CRT actually hooks into that. So now what we can do is we can, inside of Salesforce use cases, and then we create user stories, which then we attach our changes to, which then gets promoted through. And then before the ideal state was before any user story or change gets promoted, we'll have a audit robot testing script, which will then test and then do regression testing after it goes into production. And after that clears, then we can close the case. So not only is it doing the pre, but it's doing the after. Once again, that library, we're still building that library for all the different regression testing, but that obviously will start changing as we start really implementing all of our different features that we're moving through. And then it also has this ability to self-heal. With a lot of things in Salesforce, if you look at the source code on a page of and you're looking for a specific, I don't know, like field, every time the page refreshes, Salesforce puts a new ID because it's unique to that page. So typical like robotic testing that will break because it's looking for very specific things, but they've built in a little bit of this technology that allows it to look on the page and find it. They have a little bit of an OCR if they can't find it, which is also kind of a cool feature. We use other products. We use Selenium before, and it's good. It's open source. It's good. However, it broke a lot because of Salesforce and the dynamic nature of Salesforce, right? So you add a new field to a page layout, and now all of a sudden the page layout on the back end is not called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's called 5, 6, 7, 8 because it's the new version or something like that, right? And then we also are using Test Sigma, which is it's also a good one, but once again, it's just a little more tailored for Salesforce. It obviously does our full stack as well, but yeah, that's why.
Good stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you said you have all the clouds, you have all of the products.
We do.
So it's a lot, right? So one of these has to be keeping you up at night. Which is the one that's really, really making you crazy, that you worry about constantly? That's like you just curse it, let's say, curse at it.
Like one of the clouds, or one of the things that we built inside of Salesforce.
Whichever it is, there's always something that you like.
Yeah.
Oh,
There. So I mentioned it earlier. We
Right.
have this submit to QC, right? QC is a group, but it's also this giant application that we created.
Sure. What does
that
QC stand for?
Quality control.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So essentially, when an agent is ready to bind, it has to go through QC. And the first thing it does is it's a group, but preemptively, we have this Lightning Web component that they have to kind of do these checks, kind of like a checklist of various things. But it's got to know everything about that policy, everything. And everything has to be filled out. Everything has all the I's, T's crossed and all that fun stuff before it gets submitted. Well, because of the complexity of it anytime that people ask that to be updated or worked on, it's in Apex, referencing a Lightning Web Component is the front part. I sweat a little bullet every time the development, because that single point will, if that goes down, production stops. Like no policies can be bound. Done. And
how much business do you think that would cost if that happened? Just to put it into like real monetary value, or how many, hundreds or thousands of policies could that potentially destroy?
Well, I would assume it gets right. I would assume it gets backlogged for a little while before you lose it. But if you're like real time, yeah.
True. I would the total dollar amount. I wouldn't even venture to guess. It'd be a lot.
Why are you trying to make him lose more hair, man?
but what I would say is the insurance market is so volatile right now that if you wait even a few hours, that policy could expire and the rate could double.
Wow.
So it's so critical, speed to action on these things, that we have to get it through to get it bound with the carrier as soon as possible before the rate changes. Now it may go up, may go down, I don't know, but just the way the insurance market has been, and I'm sure everybody knows it, the insurance market has been horrible. But even with that, we still grew another 30% last year, just because we're able to look at so many different carriers to find, great rates.
Long may that continue as
yes.
well.
Yes. Well, let's hope the insurance rates go down, because I want to save some money. Are you kidding? Jeez.
So, I mean, obviously, you guys are experiencing financial, massive growth there. I assume you're crediting the Salesforce system to that in a big way. So, are there any like specifics, implementations, projects that you think really like just give you such a big bang for your buck in terms of ROI to the business?
So yes, and this is Salesforce adjacent, but so we're doing a couple things right now, right? So also at the very end of last year, about October, I started a project, and I think I may have mentioned it before when I talked about Tableau, and we stood up a data warehouse on Snowflake. I know Snowflake and Salesforce are like thick as thieves, right? Like Data Cloud loves Snowflake, and I think part of it even runs on Snowflake. I was at the Tableau conference this year, and I kind of cornered an engineer, and he's like, "Yeah, I worked at Snowflake with Data Cloud, and it's sort of the same technology," or blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, cool." And so like I also said, we also have a CRMA, which I think used to be called Wave, I think, or
yes.
Einstein was it at one point as well?
Yes, Einstein.
Yeah, and then
Wave,
it was called like
Analytics Cloud, Einstein Analytics.
Yeah.
Then Tableau CRM, and then now CRM Analytics.
So it's a good product, right? And so we've been using it since like day one, right? So we have just tons of stuff built in CRMA, but there are some limitations around that product, right? Doing some really deep like number crunching and stuff like that, it kind of struggles a little bit with larger data sets, as well as like the sync time between CRMA and Salesforce Core CRM. So long story short, we spun up a Tableau Snowflake. We're replicating our Salesforce org into Snowflake every 2 hours. We're moving it over. We're using an application called dbt to create models, different data models, and then what we're doing, then we're exposing those to Tableau. So beginning of the year, we had 0 data analysts. Now we have 3 with a data analyst manager. Thank you, Kira. And this team has become one of the most sought after teams because of the amount of information they're able to now give to the business that wasn't really possible before. So imagine having an org 14 years old, never archived or deleted anything, all that data, and you try to run a report on a table that has like, I don't know, 35 million records or something like that. You know, it's just not going to work. Mind you, we have since we're archiving and things like that, so it's happening. But now we're unlocking so much more analytics with Tableau, being able to utilize Salesforce data, but in a more robust manner using Snowflake. So that already we have seen so much insights. We've been familiar with the pulse and things like that, but honestly, we are working with different data scientists and things like that to really mine data, and that's where we're really seeing the value as of right now. So I know Tableau is not a new product, but it's new to us. And another unique thing about Goosehead is we're all SaaS products. We don't have any on-prem technology. Everything we have is SaaS. So we use Tableau Cloud, which it's just been it's been really great for our organization.
Yeah, CRM Analytics works really well with Snowflake also. It has the native Snowflake connector and pull the data out. It's a pattern I use a lot where I replicate Salesforce to Snowflake, do all the transformations in Snowflake, link it back to the data set, build my dashboards in CRM Analytics, and don't use the recipes at all. And that kind of solves a lot of that transformation headaches you're talking about.
Oh, that's a good idea. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, Salesforce CRM Analytics also have the native sync out to
Yes.
Snowflake, which you can just use for the replication. So it works really nice. Believe it or not, this morning I built a dashboard on a data set using the CRMA live connector to Snowflake. So it doesn't replicate the data. The data set in Snowflake has 850 million records, so nearly a billion
Wow.
records. Massive
Wow.
data set. So, I don't know. It's not heavily used, which is good. My concern is like if I bed something like that into a Salesforce page, I'm going to get slammed with Snowflake CPU charges, right? Because
Yes.
yeah. So it's not a heavily used dashboard, right? So you really got to think about,
Yeah.
do you really want to connect it, live to Snowflake with massive data sets and then just let everyone pound it, right? Obviously, you got to worry about this stuff. But yeah, this is a whole conversation.
Whilst we're on the topic of data,
yeah.
obviously we can see, for those that are watching this episode, we can see Maz's data hoodie. And in the last 24 hours, there's been a huge announcement in the Salesforce space with the acquisition Salesforce has made of Own. Own company, which was formerly Own Backup, right? I think it used to be known as. For those that know the company a bit longer. Not a scripted answer by any means. We haven't talked about this. Obviously, it's hot off the press, but very quickly, is that a move that excites you guys? Is that a move that you think, oh, it's going to increase cost, or how are we feeling about that kind of acquisition in general?
Well, it's funny. I don't know if I told you, but I serve on their product advisory board, and they didn't tell us. They've been really tight-lipped. So when I heard about it, you guys heard about it. They were on site 2 days ago, actually, and they didn't talk about it then either. Any company that does really well and does something really well, like really, and the market is really saturated in that product, Salesforce typically buys it, but you guys already know that. I am nervous about what this looks like as far as pricing is concerned. Yes, I am a little concerned because how heavily we are invested in Own as a company, and their products are really great. And then they're just releasing this new product called Discover, I believe. And then essentially, they have all, let's say you've been backing it with, like Goose has been backing up with them for like 10 years. Well, they have 10 years worth of your data in snapshots for whatever your retention is or whatever you have with their contract. They have that data. And now they're letting you access that data in via SQL. So you can hook up any SQL. Gosh, was it Redbricks? I can't remember what they're using, but yeah. So can you imagine how interesting that could be to now crunch your data over a 10-year span of all the changes that have happened throughout all those backups? It's very, very, very interesting. It's very smart technology, and it's fast. We did see a little demo of it. So, and it's sitting there. It's waiting. It's waiting for you to buy it. Buy your data
Yeah, I
back.
mean, it's a great product. Own. My clients have been using it, or my clients' clients have been using it for years. Um, I'm gonna be honest. It's something I have a gripe with Salesforce for a long time. Is the lack of a proper backup restore solution. Like, it should
Oh
be
yeah.
quick. Take
Oh yeah.
snapshot, roll back, particularly over deployment weekends. The partners in Salesforce ecosystem, everyone in the Salesforce ecosystem, it's like, you got a big org, we're doing a deployment, it's the whole weekend, and it's like, what's our rollback process? And it's often like, yeah, there's no rolling. It's like, we're gonna roll forward, and that's that. We just gotta
Yeah.
make it work. And it's just one of my gripes. I feel like Salesforce should have solved for that. And I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. Like, charge us for, like, we'll pay for that. If I need
Yeah.
to pay
Yeah.
for a snapshot so that I can roll back, the whole work, metadata, data,
Yeah.
you know, soup to nuts. It's like it's a badly, badly needed feature. And even with own backup, right? Own backup is working within the constraints of the APIs, right? So
Right.
if you wiped out data and then you restore, the IDs are changing. If you have integrations, that can cause problems for that. Your sandboxes are now out of sync, right? It's not perfect.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why it shouldn't. It's a complaint. As a data person, it's a complaint I've had for a long time. I feel like it makes the stress of deployments, particularly big deployments, on production orgs, really, 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 really stressful, because it's like there's no going back. So it's one of the reasons why Own has done so well, for sure,
Yes.
because of lack, right? You go to people who are like not from the Salesforce world and like, what do you mean? Just back up the database, back up the code, and then right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, we had an issue where we had to do a restore, and it took like 24 hours to do a couple of records, and that's really just due to complexity and Own having to work with the constraints of what Salesforce enables them to do, right? Like you were saying, the APIs and
Yeah.
just how
No, with
quickly
the
they can,
validation rules,
yeah,
right?
push
I mean,
and pull. Yeah.
something simple, right? The opportunity is allowed to move from stage A to stage B, but it can't go from stage B to stage A. So now what? It fails, right? Because you can't roll back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely there's like some gaps, obviously, but yeah, you're right. There has to be a better solution than just clicking on your object and hitting download and then waiting for a CSV file to pop down.
There's
Well,
nothing you can do with that CSV. Like, what do you do with that CSV file?
You can
Archive it and then hope
yeah,
that you never need it?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you just
Okay.
know that you have it.
Right.
we'll let you data nerds geek out a little bit offline about it. It sounds like that was opening the can of worms a little bit. So moving on, Ethan, a couple of quick questions as we wrap up. What advice would you give another leader in your, similar shoes to yourself, who is coming into an enterprise organization with potentially hundreds, thousands of users, and they've been using Salesforce for 10 plus years? What would be your key piece of advice to that individual?
Jeez. Well, I guess hopefully what I did was the right thing. make sure you align yourself with good people around you. That's a good thing. Number two, don't make any rash decisions at first when a problem jumps because you don't know the full picture yet. People tend to jump at fires, and you have to put out the fire, but you definitely need to know more context before you figure out what you're putting out, because that may inevitably cause more problems. Give yourself a little grace. There is in Salesforce, really, there's a bell curve in really anything, right? So that learning it's really tough, and then once you get kind of over the hump, it gets a little easier. So also, what I do is I literally go into setup and I just start clicking through the configurations in our UAT environment and just trying to figure out the lay of the land, at least knowing the default configurations of what's happening. So that way, when someone asks me questions, maybe I don't know the answers, but I know where to look, or maybe I do know just a little bit of what's going on. Yeah, and I would say, once again, just take a deep breath, because this org is big and it's going to take you a little bit before you understand it.
Awesome. And what was the biggest differentiator, again, for our listeners, for context? Obviously you spent a lot of your career in the nonprofit space.
Mm-hmm.
What was the biggest differentiator going from nonprofit to commercial, and then into not just commercial, but also, as you mentioned, a industry where there is a lot of scrutiny? There's a lot of eyes on policies and regulations and things like that. What was kind of the biggest? I didn't realize that was the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent, like you said, the majority of my career in various nonprofit roles, dabbling here and there in for-profit. But since I've hopped out, this has been, I would say, the eye-opener is really understanding, especially in this org, the direct impact on what you do in Salesforce. Because like this particular company, like I said, they live and breathe. So you change one thing and that ripple effect is so, it's earth shattering sometimes, that what can happen on one little thing. And also having to understand that now, being a publicly traded company, there's other people that you're answering to, right? Not that you don't take your job seriously in a nonprofit, but it's a little bit more relaxed. You have a little bit more time to breathe. It's not quite as fast paced. Not that you don't have the mission or the passion and all that fun stuff to get that done, but this is a little bit different. Having to make sure that bottom line always looks good.
Very cool. And so, looking towards the future, like what are you really excited about? Either in Salesforce or in the insurance industry, or have you had it with the insurance industry and maybe eventually you get at it? I mean, insurance is definitely definitely an interesting space.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So what are you excited about? What do you see changing? Like, what do you see on the horizons for CRM in general, or Salesforce, and the insurance
So I mean,
industry?
yeah, I know that this is
Agent Force
such.
going to be a thing for you guys?
Oh, yeah, exactly, Agent Force. I was gonna say, this is the buzzword, is the AI, right? AI is
Right.
the new thing. The more I've been digging in it, the more I'm really understanding. We've done a lot of POCs with large language models using CRM data, trying to use Salesforce AI. Not this first iteration, not been like, we're not heavy adopters of it at this point. I think we're a little bit more advanced with the stuff that we've already built. So I am interested to see where this is going to go. Yes, this agent portal should be interesting. I've been actually researching a little bit about all of this AI stuff, and just understanding like what their vision is and what they're trying to do in between the generative, large language to predictive to all these things and how it fits in their ecosystem on paper on their Salesforce slides, it looks really, really cool and really, really good. But I need to see it before I'll be a heavy investor. Someone told me one time, you shouldn't adopt any Salesforce product until 2 Dreamforces. So it came out a couple like two ago or 1 ago, and so we'll see what happens this time around. But yeah, so I am very interested, and I'm a huge user of the Chat GPT, but I also really understand the limitations and the limitations of the actual AI LLM generation that we have now, right? Like, it's good, but it's not replacing any jobs as of now. So I'm interested to see where this goes in the future inside of Salesforce and then out in just the general ecosystem of the world.
Time will tell.
That's right.
Time will tell. All right, fantastic. Well, Ethan, just want to say a massive thank you for your time today, and ensuring insurance is on top of mind, and sharing the uniqueness of the business at Goosehead Insurance, how you navigate in the insurance industry, and shedding a bit more information on how you're currently using Salesforce and plans for the future. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
For our listeners, please do not forget to subscribe to the CRM Success Show for more episodes featuring amazing leaders like Ethan, who are really and truly shaping the shape of Salesforce and the future of CRM. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, watch us on YouTube, and keep an eye out for the latest updates and exclusive content around our podcast releases and when they air. For now, thank you again, and take care.